Detroit adopted, where it came from, what it went through, and where it is going. Detroit began 400 years ago. In 1618, Eton Brule, first European to step foot on Michigan area before it was a state or territory. It was soon called Detroit for the river linking lakes Huron and Erie. At this time, fur trade was very important. In 1720, it was recorded that the population was 200. 34 years later, the French and Indian Wars would see the British take over the area. In 1794, the British ran out of Detroit until 1812. Before 1812, in 1796, Detroit and the surrounding area is ceded to the Americans by England, creating the border with Canada. This is called the Jay Treaty Act. In 1813, the British leave Detroit to the Americans for good. 1815, Detroit is formally established as a city with its own schools, shops, and churches. 2 years later, newspaper becomes a form of communication within the city. Economy and transportation. In 1818, steamboats and shipping helped make the fur trade strong. However, overhunting leads to dwindling of the fur economy. 1825, Detroit recovers with completion of the Erie Canal, which brings German and Irish immigrants along with black immigrants and more business to the area. City planning and townships. After the city is planned according to that of the capital in D.C., its streets are made of wooden planks and cobblestone. In 1827, townships are conceived and formed around the Detroit area. After this, city expansion is embraced with geometric street plans like that of Paris, and Detroit becomes the Paris of the West. Mail service, cholera, and Detroit's first race riot soon appear. The Underground Railroad becomes very efficient in Detroit and the Canadian border. The Underground Railroad becomes efficient because it is close to the Canadian border. 1830 through the post-Civil War. Shipping, shipbuilding, and iron manufacturing takes the place of fur trade and economics. Electricity became known in Detroit as city-supplied power. The Gilded Age type mansions were added east and west of the current downtown, showing the success of industry. Asphalt streets are introduced, and in 1896, Henry Ford builds his first automobile. By the year 1900, the population is 286,000. Remember, it was only 200 in 1720. Ransom Olds and Henry Ford are in competition in the automobile race. Detroit is the world's largest manufacturer of heating and cooking stoves. Immigrant city. 12% of Detroit's population are non-English speaking, the highest in the nation. 20th century begins. It's a boom for the 125 auto companies in Detroit, and Henry Ford tops the list with the Model T. Of course, Detroit becomes Motor City. With Ford's $5 a day, this brings Fordism reality with 90,000 employees at his plant. The Big Three. By mid-20th century, 1 out of 6 working Americans was employed because of the auto industry. The auto industry's epicenter was Detroit, but there were many surrounding areas that sold spark plugs and other things that were needed for these cars. This became a bigger industry, and it just helped it grow and helped Detroit grow. Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler are the 3 largest auto firms, and all based in Detroit. Hundreds of thousands are put to work. By the mid-20th century, Detroit sees labor fights and brawls which lead to unionization. By 1950, auto workers are among the best paid in the country, leading to huge black populations migrating to the city. They come to the city expecting to find work and be put to work because of all the progression that's been going on in Detroit. The auto workers in Detroit are considered in the middle class. Detroit residents become homeowners, are able to save college funds for their children, and could afford vacations, which brought about resort towns in Michigan. The population by the mid-20th century is 2 million, and Detroit is the fifth largest city. Decentralization equals deindustrialization. By the late 1960s, automation has taken the place of human employees, which causes empty manufacturing. Many companies spread out to suburban areas in the Sun Belt for lower wage workforces, taking jobs with them. White population has moved to the suburbs and become homeowners. However, the black population is left in the city with less employment opportunity. Detroit struggles. In the 1980s, competition reaches America from overseas. With the oil crisis of the Nixon and Carter administration, Detroit is in a gas-guzzling grip, and they are being replaced by cheaper ran cars that are coming from Japan. The city is empty of whites and business opportunities, leaving boarded up shop windows and huge manufacturing plants lifeless. Streets and parking lots are littered with garbage. Detroit now. Ford's Highland Park plant sits empty in the city, along with many abandoned homes. Population in 2010 was 700,000, with only 10% being white. Detroit formally filed bankruptcy in 2013. Detroit's impressive architecture. French-style skyscrapers and neo-Gothic spires make an amazing view of Detroit's international riverfront. National landmarks from the 19th century are still impressive, with French-inspired Catholic churches and the Wayne County building downtown. Neighborhoods. Downtown, Midtown, New Center, and North Detroit is where you will find most of the middle and upper classes. This is their entertainment and clubbing districts, as well as business and universities. East Detroit has more of the immigrant history, along with Conant Gardens, which is home to some of the highest educated and paid black populace of Detroit. Southwest Detroit is the highest air pollution and the lowest income housing. Tourism. Detroit hosts 3 large casino resorts: MGM Grand, Greektown, and Motor City. Sporting events and concerts go on throughout the city. Detroit houses many theaters, including the world's largest Fox Theater. Large art and music scenes, including opera, Great Lake cruises, summer boat races, and winter ice skating. Huge auto shows, of course, because it is, after all, Motor City. Getting around. Actually, to get to Canada in Detroit, you have to actually go south. Smaller, older streets are laid out in wheel and spoke grids, following that of Paris. The city is supplied with plenty of parking space. There's not much walking that can be done, as it is spread out. Downtown can be easily maneuvered with the 3 miles of elevated rail system. Shopping is mostly done outside the city in the suburbs, where all the malls are located. Present-day economy. Along with the auto companies still being headquartered there, there is also many businesses, including, but not only, Microsoft, IBM, Google, Quicken Loans, Comerica, Delta Airlines, and Bank of America. Even with such businesses, Detroit still has an unemployment rate that doubles that of the entire nation's. Conclusion. Detroit was once a city to be admired for its economical boom in the auto industry. Detroit is now in a struggle to stay afloat. In the last 2 years since first filing bankruptcy, 60 new independent businesses have been added to the downtown area. However, with so much of Detroit's businesses coming from surrounding Metro Detroit, it will need a miracle to get back to the boom it was. Therefore, it has become a city that won't give up, and until there is a population of 0, it still has a chance.